3 words through a broken intercom destroyed my marriage. You've got 3 minutes. My wife was upstairs with someone else. I left everything and disappeared. 4 days later, she called begging for help. He wasn't just her mistake. He was a ghost from her past who'd been financing our lives for months. And now he wanted my daughter. My name is Troy Bridges. I'm 44 years old, and I've been a pharmacist at Walton's Pharmacy for the past 16 years. It's steady work, nothing glamorous, but pays the bills and keeps my family comfortable. My wife Caroline is 36. She's a client manager at TechBridge Solutions, one of those IT companies that's always hustling for the next big contract. We have a 5-year-old daughter named Ella, who's got her mother's dark hair and my stubborn streak. I thought we had it figured out. The house in the suburbs, the good schools, the weekend barbecues. I thought Caroline and I were solid. Sure, we'd hit some rough patches over the years, but what couple doesn't? She'd been distant lately, distracted, always on her phone. But I chalked it up to work stress. Her company was chasing some major client, and she'd been putting in long hours. That Tuesday evening, I was in the basement trying to fix her hot water heater. The thing had been making this weird, rattling noise for weeks, and Caroline kept nagging me about it. So there I was, lying on the concrete floor with a wrench in my hand and dust in my hair when I heard it. The intercom crackled to life. We'd installed the system years ago when Ella was a baby, so we could hear her from anywhere in the house. It was supposed to be off, but the wiring had been acting up lately, randomly picking up sounds from different rooms. Caroline's voice came through, faint but clear. He's in the basement. You got maybe 3 minutes. I froze. My hand tightened around the wrench as my brain tried to process what I just heard. A man's voice responded, low and familiar in a way that made my stomach turn. 3 minutes isn't much time, Caro. Caro. Nobody called her that except me. Or so I thought. She laughed, soft and intimate. Then don't waste it talking. I sat up so fast I nearly knocked my head on the water heater. My chest felt tight, like someone had wrapped a band around my ribs and pulled. I stared at the intercom speaker mounted on the wall, willing it to say something else, something that would make this make sense. But there was only silence now, the rattling of the water heater, the hum of the old furnace in the corner. I stood up slowly, the wrench still in my hand. My legs felt unsteady, like I was walking on a ship's deck in rough water. I made my way to the stairs and climbed them one at a time, listening. The house was quiet, too quiet. When I reached the kitchen, Caroline was standing by the sink, her back to me. She was wearing her work clothes, a navy blouse and gray slacks, and her phone was pressed to her ear. Yeah, I'll have those numbers to you by Friday, she said into the phone, her voice professional and clipped. When she turned and saw me, she smiled. Hey, babe. Water heater fixed. I looked at her, really looked at her, searching for any sign of what I just heard. But her expression was calm, almost bored. Not yet, I managed to say. My voice sounded strange to my own ears, hollow and distant. Well, don't take too long, Caroline said, turning back to her phone. Ella's got dance class in an hour, and I need to leave for that client dinner by 6. I nodded, even though she wasn't looking at me. Then I walked past her, through the living room, and out the front door. I got in my truck and just drove. I didn't have a plan, didn't know where I was going. I just knew I couldn't stay in that house, couldn't look at her face and pretend I hadn't heard what I'd heard. By the time the gas light came on, I was 200 miles away, parked outside a roadside motel in West Virginia. The neon sign flickered red and blue against the twilight sky. That was 4 days ago. I kept my phone off for 3 days. I knew Caroline would call, would text, would try to explain or manipulate or do whatever it took to reel me back in. I wasn't ready for that. I needed silence, needed space to think without her voice in my head telling me I'd misunderstood, that I was overreacting. The motel room was cheap and depressing. Thin walls, a sagging mattress, and a bathroom that smelled like bleach and mildew. But it was mine, at least for now. I spent most of my time staring at the water-stained ceiling, replaying that conversation over and over in my mind. He's in the basement. You've got maybe 3 minutes. On the 4th morning, I turned my phone on. It buzzed for a solid 2 minutes, lighting up with notifications. 47 missed calls from Caroline. 32 text messages. 6 voicemails. I didn't open any of them. Not yet. Then it rang in my hand, and her name flashed across the screen. I stared at it for 3 rings. 4. 5. My thumb hovered over the red button, ready to send it to voicemail. But something stopped me. Maybe it was curiosity. Maybe it was the part of me that still wanted to believe there was an explanation, some reasonable answer that would make this all go away. I answered. Troy. Her voice came through immediately, raw and strained. Thank God. I've been going out of my mind. Where are you? I didn't say anything. I just listened. Please, Caroline continued, and I could hear the tears starting. Please just tell me you're okay. Ella keeps asking where you are, and I don't know what to tell her. That hit harder than I expected. The thought of my little girl asking for me, confused and scared, twisted something deep in my chest. I'm fine, I said finally. My voice came out flat, emotionless. Can you come home? Caroline asked. We need to talk. Face to face. You deserve that much. Do I? The words came out sharper than I intended. Because from where I'm sitting, I don't think I deserve anything except the truth. And I'm not sure you're capable of that. There was a pause. I could hear her breathing on the other end, could picture her standing in our kitchen, one hand pressed to her forehead the way she always did when she was stressed. What you heard, she began carefully, it's not what you think. I laughed, a bitter sound. That's what everyone says when they get caught. I'm not lying to you, Caroline said, her voice hardening now. Yes, someone was at the house. Yes, I asked him to leave before you came upstairs. But it wasn't because we were doing anything wrong. Then who was he? I demanded. And why didn't you tell me someone was there? She hesitated. That hesitation told me more than any words could. His name is Wesley, she said finally. Wesley Vaughn. He's someone from my past. We were together a long time ago, before I met you. He showed up out of nowhere 3 months ago, saying he needed to apologize for how things ended between us. He said he was sick, that he didn't have much time left, and wanted to make things right. My jaw clenched. And you believed him. I felt sorry for him, Caroline admitted. I agreed to meet him once, just for coffee, just to hear him out. But it turned out he wasn't sick. He lied. And after that meeting, he started showing up at my office, calling me, texting me. I told him to stop, Troy. I swear I did. But he won't listen. So that's why he was in our house. I asked, my voice cold. Because he's stalking you, and you decided not to tell your husband about it. I didn't want to worry you, she said quickly. I thought I could handle it myself. I thought he'd get bored and go away. But he's getting worse. He showed up at the house when you were in the basement, and I panicked. I told him you'd be upstairs any minute, hoping he'd leave. And he did. I wanted to believe her. God, I want to believe her so badly it hurt. But something about her story didn't sit right. If he's stalking you, why haven't you gone to the police? I asked. Another pause. Because he's not just some random guy, Troy, Caroline said, her voice dropping to almost a whisper. He's wealthy, connected. He owns a tech company with 40 employees and enough money to bury anyone who gets in his way. I reported him once, anonymously, and the next day a detective called me back and suggested I drop it. Said there wasn't enough evidence. I stood up and walked to the window, staring out at the empty parking lot. I need time, I said finally. Time for what? Caroline asked, and now she sounded desperate. To figure out if I believe you. I stayed away for 2 more days, trying to sort through the mess in my head. Part of me wanted to believe Caroline's story about Wesley being some obsessed ex who wouldn't leave her alone. But the other part, the part that had heard her laugh in that intimate way, couldn't shake the feeling that she was hiding something bigger. On the 6th day, I drove back into town. Not to the house, but to Ella's preschool. I needed to see my daughter, needed to know she was okay, even if I wasn't ready to face Caroline yet. I parked across the street at pickup time and watched the parents gathering by the front gate. Caroline's car pulled up right on schedule, and I saw Ella burst through the doors, her pink backpack bouncing as she ran toward her mother. But then I noticed something that made my stomach drop. A man was standing near the playground fence, about 20 feet from where Caroline waited. Tall, mid-40s, wearing an expensive suit that looked out of place among the casual parent crowd. He wasn't looking at his phone or talking to anyone. He was just watching. Watching Caroline. Watching Ella. I got out of my truck and started walking toward them, my heart pounding. As I got closer, I could see his face clearly. Sharp features, dark hair graying at the temples, and eyes that tracked Caroline's every movement with an intensity that made my skin crawl. Wesley Vaughn. Had to be. Caroline was buckling Ella into her car seat when she glanced up and saw me. Her eyes went wide, then darted toward the man by the fence. He saw me too, and for a moment, we locked eyes. He smiled, not a friendly smile, but something colder, more calculating. Then he turned and walked away, disappearing around the corner of the building. I reached Caroline's car, just as she closed Ella's door. "Troy," she said, her voice tight. "What are you doing here?" "Who was that?" I demanded, keeping my voice low so Ella wouldn't hear through the window. Caroline glanced over her shoulder, even though Wesley was already gone. "That was him. That was Wesley. He was watching you," I said. "Watching our daughter." "I know," Caroline whispered, and I could see fear in her eyes now. Real fear, not the performed kind. "He's been doing this for weeks. Showing up wherever I go. The grocery store. The gym. Now here. Have you documented any of this?" I asked. "Photos? Videos?" She shook her head. "I've tried, but he's always too far away or moves before I can get my phone out. It's like he knows exactly how to stay just outside the line of what I could prove." I looked back toward where he'd been standing. "Did he say anything to you?" "Not today," Caroline said. "But last week, he came up to me at the coffee shop near my office. He said Ella was beautiful. He said she reminded him of someone." Her voice broke. "Troy, I'm terrified. I don't know what he wants, but it's not just me anymore. He's interested in her." The protective fury that rose in me was so strong it nearly blinded me to everything else. Whatever had happened between Caroline and Wesley, whatever lies she might have told, none of it mattered as much as keeping Ella safe. "Get in the car," I said. "Follow me." "Where are we going?" Caroline asked. "To the police station," I told her. "Right now." We filed a report. I insisted on it, even though I could see the doubt in the officer's eyes when Caroline explained that Wesley hadn't technically threatened her, hadn't done anything illegal. Standing near a playground wasn't a crime. Neither was shopping at the same grocery store. Unless he makes direct contact or threatens you explicitly, there's not much we can do, the officer said, his tone sympathetic but firm. "You can file for a restraining order, but you'll need more evidence than this." Caroline's hand shook as she signed the report. "What kind of evidence?" "Documentation," the officer said. "Photos, videos, witnesses. Keep a log of every time you see him. If he approaches you, record it. And if he ever threatens you or your family directly, call 911 immediately." We left the station with a case number and nothing else. That night, I didn't go back to the motel. Instead, I drove to the one person who might have answers about Wesley Vaughn and Caroline's past. Her name was Maureen Cross, and she'd been Caroline's college roommate before they'd had some kind of falling out about 8 years ago. I'd only met her once, at our wedding, and Caroline had never talked about why they stopped being friends. I found Maureen's address through an old Christmas card Liz Caroline kept in her desk drawer. She lived in an apartment complex on the east side of town, the kind of place with thin walls and a parking lot full of older cars. When she opened the door, recognition flashed across her face, followed by something that looked like resignation. "Troy," she said, "I wonder when you show up." "You know why I'm here?" I asked. Maureen nodded slowly. "Come in. This isn't a conversation for the hallway." Her apartment was small but tidy, filled with plants and bookshelves. She poured us both coffee without asking if I wanted any, then sat down across from me at her kitchen table. "How much has Caroline told you?" Maureen asked. "She said Wesley is someone from her past who won't leave her alone," I said. "That he showed up 3 months ago, claiming to be sick, and she met him once out of pity." Maureen let out a long breath. "That's the sanitized version." My chest tightened. "What's the real version?" 10 years ago, Caroline went through a rough patch. Maureen began carefully. She was drinking too much, making bad decisions. She checked herself into a private rehabilitation facility for 6 weeks. It wasn't just about alcohol. She was dealing with some trauma from before college, stuff she'd never processed properly. I sat back in my chair, stunned. Caroline had never mentioned any of this. Not once in 12 years of marriage. Wesley was there too, Maureen continued. He presented himself as a volunteer counselor, someone who'd been through recovery and wanted to help others. But that was a lie. He was never a patient and never qualified to counsel anyone. He was there hunting for vulnerable women. The coffee in my stomach turned to acid. What happened? He targeted Caroline, Maureen said. Spent weeks gaining her trust, making her feel understood and safe. They had a brief romantic involvement while she was still in treatment. When she finally realized something was wrong with him, that he was manipulating her, she tried to end it. But Wesley didn't take that well. How didn't he take it well? I asked. Maureen's expression darkened. He stalked her for 2 years. Showed up at her apartment. Got her fired from 2 jobs by spreading rumors about her. Hacked in her email and sent messages to her family pretending to be her. One time, she came home and found all her furniture rearranged. Nothing taken, just moved. He was showing her he could get to her whenever he wanted. My hands clenched into fists on the table. Why didn't she press charges? She tried, Maureen said. But Wesley had money, connections. He'd covered his tracks carefully. And back then, stalking laws weren't what they are now. The police basically told her to get over it. Eventually, he seemed to lose interest. Or so he thought. Caroline changed her phone number, moved to a different city, started fresh. That's when she met you. And she never thought to tell me any of this. I said, anger rising in my voice. She wanted to leave that part of her life behind, Maureen said. She thought if she didn't talk about it, it would stay buried. But clearly, Wesley never forgot about her. I stood up and walked to the window, trying to process everything Maureen had just told me. Why did you and Caroline stop being friends? Maureen hesitated. Because I told her she needed to be honest with you. That if Wesley ever came back, you deserved to know what you were dealing with. She said I was being paranoid, that he was gone for good. We fought about it, and we never reconciled. I turned back to face her. Is there anything else I should know? Yes, Maureen said, meeting my eyes. Wesley doesn't just stalk. He ruins people. Systematically, methodically. If he's back in Caroline's life, he's not just going to harass her. He's going to destroy everything she's built, including you. After leaving Maureen's apartment, I went back to digging. If Wesley Vaughn was as connected and wealthy as everyone claimed, there had to be a trail. I started with the basics, searching his name online, looking for business registrations, social media profiles, anything that would give me leverage. What I found made my blood run cold. TechBridge Solutions, the company where Caroline worked, had received a major investment 6 months ago. The lead investor was Wesley's company, Vaughn Digital Systems. Caroline had never mentioned it, but the timing was impossible to ignore. Wesley hadn't just shown up randomly. He'd engineered his way back into her life through her job. I was sitting in a coffee shop, staring at my laptop screen, when my phone rang. Caroline's number. It was past midnight. I answered. What's wrong? Troy. Her voice was shaking, barely above a whisper. Someone's in the house. Every muscle in my body tensed. Where's Ella? Sleeping. I heard footsteps downstairs. The alarm didn't go off, but I know someone's here. I can hear them moving around. Lock your bedroom door, I said, already grabbing my keys. Call 911. I'm 15 minutes away. I already called, Caroline said. They said a unit is on the way. But Troy, I'm scared. What if? Stay on the line with me. I interrupted, running to my truck. Don't hang up. Talk to me. Is your door locked? Yes, she said. But the lock is just one of those push-button ones. It wouldn't stop anyone who really wanted to get in. I could hear the fear in her voice, raw and genuine. Whatever had happened between us, whatever lies she'd told, none of it mattered in that moment. My wife and daughter were in danger. I made that 15-minute drive in 10, running 2 red lights and pushing the truck to its limit. Police cars were already in the driveway when I pulled up, their lights painting the neighborhood red and blue. An officer met me at the door. You're the husband? Yes, I said. Where's my family? They're safe. Upstairs. We're clearing the house now. I pushed past him and took the stairs 2 at a time. Caroline was sitting on the edge of our bed with Ella in her lap, both of them looking pale and frightened. When Ella saw me, she burst into tears. Daddy, I crossed the room and wrapped my arms around both of them, feeling Ella's small body trembling against mine. Caroline's hand gripped my shirt like I was the only solid thing in a world that had turned liquid. Did they find anyone? I asked quietly. Caroline shook her head. They said the house is empty. But Troy, someone was here. I know what I heard. One of the officers appeared in the doorway. Sir, could you come downstairs for a moment? I gently extracted myself from my girls and followed him down to the kitchen. Another officer was standing by the back door, which stood open. The lock's been picked, the first officer said, pointing to the scratches around the keyhole. Professional job. Whoever did this knew what they were doing. But here's the thing. Nothing's been taken or disturbed as far as we can tell. Check the hallway mirror, I said, remembering something from the original story I'd heard. But when we walked to the hallway, the mirror was clean. No message, no signs that anyone had been there at all. "We'll file a report," the officer said. "I'd recommend changing all your locks and getting a proper security system. Maybe some cameras." After they left, I sat with Caroline in the living room while Ella slept fitfully upstairs, a baby monitor on the coffee table between us. "I started going through our finances today," I said quietly. "Wesley's company invested in TechBridge 6 months ago. That's not a coincidence, is it?" Caroline's face crumbled. "I didn't know until after the deal closed. My boss announced it at a company meeting, and when I saw Wesley's name on the paperwork, I thought I was going to be sick. But by then, he was already showing up at the office, acting like we were old friends in front of everyone." "Why didn't you quit?" I asked. "Because he wanted me to quit," Caroline said. "I could see it in his eyes every time he suggested I didn't look happy there, that maybe I should find something less stressful. He was trying to isolate me, Troy, take away my job, my income, make me dependent on you. And then he'd show you I was weak, that I couldn't contribute, and he'd swoop in to save me from my mediocre life." I sat back, processing this. "He's been planning this for months. Years, maybe," Caroline said. "Maureen told you about the furniture, right? How he broke into my apartment and moved everything." I nodded. "That's his signature move," Caroline continued. "He doesn't steal or vandalize. He rearranges, moves things just enough that you know someone was there, that they touched your space. It's about control, about showing you he can get to you whenever he wants." "We need to leave," I said. "Tonight. Pack bags for you and Ella. We'll go to a hotel until we figure out what to do next." Caroline looked at me, tears streaming down her face. "You're staying? After everything?" "I'm staying," I said firmly. "Because whatever mistakes you made, whatever you kept from me, Wesley Vaughn is the enemy here, not you. And I'm not going to let him destroy my family." We spent 2 weeks living in a series of different hotels, never staying more than 2 nights in one place. Caroline took leave from work, citing a family emergency. I used my vacation days. Ella thought we were on an adventure, which was better than trying to explain the truth. During those 2 weeks, I did my homework. I hired a private investigator, a former FBI agent named Patricia Ramos who specialized in stalking cases. She was expensive, but Derek loaned me the money without hesitation. Patricia found things that made my skin crawl. Wesley had 5 other women in the past 20 years who'd filed restraining orders against him. 2 of them had disappeared, though there was never enough evidence to charge him with anything. One had died in what was ruled an accidental fall down her apartment stairs. The police had investigated, but found nothing concrete. "This man is dangerous," Patricia told me during one of our meetings. "He's smart, patient, and he knows how to work the system. But he's also arrogant. That's going to be his downfall." "What do you mean?" I asked. "He thinks he's untouchable because of his money and connections," Patricia explained. "But everyone makes mistakes eventually. We just need to create the right circumstances to catch him making one." She proposed a plan. We'd use Caroline as bait, but with every safety precaution in place. Hidden cameras, tracking devices, recording equipment, and Patricia's team watching from close range. Wesley had been trying to isolate Caroline, to get her alone so he could make his move. We'd give him what he thought was an opportunity. Caroline was terrified, but she agreed. "I'm tired of running," she said. "I want my life back." We set the trap at a storage facility on the outskirts of town. I'd found a GPS tracker on Caroline's car, hidden under the wheel well. Instead of removing it, we used it. Caroline drove to the facility at night, alone as far as Wesley would know, to supposedly pick up some boxes from her old apartment. Patricia's team was there ahead of time, hidden in unmarked vans with camera equipment. I was there too, in a different vehicle with a clear view of the entrance. My heart hammered against my ribs as I watched Caroline's car pull into the lot. 20 minutes later, another vehicle appeared. Wesley's silver BMW. He parked 3 spaces away from Caroline and got out. I watched through Patricia's monitor as he approached her, his movements casual, like he just happened to be in the area. The conversation started friendly enough. We couldn't hear what they were saying yet, but Caroline was playing her part perfectly, looking nervous but not hostile. Then Wesley moved closer, backing her against her car. That's when his demeanor changed. Even from a distance, I could see the shift. His posture became aggressive, predatory. He grabbed Caroline's arm, and she tried to pull away. Now, Patricia said into her radio. Her team moved in fast, professional. 2 plainclothes officers appeared from the adjacent units. Badges out. Police. Let her go. Wesley released Caroline immediately, his expression smoothing into something pleasant and confused. Officers, I think there's been a misunderstanding. But Patricia had already given the signal. Another officer was approaching Wesley's car with a search warrant. Inside, they found what we'd hoped for, but also feared: photos. Dozens of them. Pictures of Caroline at work, at the grocery store, picking up Ella from school. Pictures of me. Pictures of our house from different angles, taken at different times of day. And worse, a detailed timeline of Caroline's movements over the past 3 months, complete with notes about her routines, her vulnerabilities, her weak points. They also found a box containing several items that had been reported stolen from Caroline's car and desk at work over the past few months. Things she thought she'd simply lost. A scarf, a coffee mug, a photo of Ella. He'd been collecting trophies. Wesley was arrested on the spot. Stalking, breaking, and entering, possession of stolen property. His lawyer got him out on bail within 48 hours, but the damage was done. Patricia had documented everything, and the evidence was overwhelming. The trial took 4 months. Wesley's expensive legal team tried everything, claiming the items in his car were planted, that the photos were taken for legitimate business purposes, that Caroline had encouraged his attention. But Patricia's documentation was airtight. The other women came forward, testifying about their experiences. The jury took less than 3 hours to convict him on multiple counts. Wesley Vaughn was sentenced to 6 years in prison, with a permanent restraining order to take effect upon his release. Caroline and I spent those 4 months in therapy, both individual and couples. The road to rebuilding trust wasn't easy. There were nights she cried herself to sleep, apologizing for not telling me about her past. There were days I wanted to walk away because the hurt was too fresh, too raw. But we stayed. We worked. We fought for our marriage because underneath all the lies and fear, we still loved each other. 8 months after Wesley's sentencing, we sold a house. Too many bad memories. We bought a smaller place in a different neighborhood, somewhere Wesley would never be able to find even after his release. Caroline got a job at a different company, one with no connection to Wesley or his business interests. I kept working at the pharmacy, steady and reliable as always. Ella started 1st grade. She still has nightmares sometimes, though she doesn't remember much about that period. We tell her they were just bad dreams. Last week, Caroline and I celebrated our 13th wedding anniversary. It was quiet, just the 2 of us at a restaurant while Ella stayed with Caroline's sister. Over dessert, Caroline reached across the table and took my hand. "Thank you," she said. "For what?" I asked. "For not giving up on us. For being strong enough to fight when I was too scared to fight for myself." I squeezed her hand. That's what marriage is. You fight for each other, even when it's hard. Especially when it's hard. We're not perfect. We still have moments where the past creeps in, where trust feels fragile. But we're here. We're together. And Wesley Vaughn is behind bars where he belongs. That has to count for something. And for now, it's enough to build on. Wesley made bail faster than I expected. 72 hours after his arrest, he was back on the streets with an ankle monitor and a restraining order that required him to stay 500 feet away from Caroline, Ella, and our home. The problem was 500 feet isn't very far. I was at work 3 days later when Caroline called, her voice shaking. "He's outside my office building, standing across the street, just watching. Call the police." I said immediately, already heading for the door. I did. They said unless he crosses the street or comes within the restricted distance, there's nothing they can do. He knows exactly where the line is, Troy. He's standing right at it. I drove to her office, my knuckles white on the steering wheel. When I got there, I saw him. Wesley stood on the opposite corner, perfectly positioned at what must have been exactly 500 feet. He was holding a coffee cup, looking relaxed, like he was just enjoying the morning air. But his eyes never left the building entrance. When he saw me park, he smiled, raised his coffee cup in a mock toast, then turned and walked away. That night, I installed security cameras around our house. 6 of them, covering every angle. I also hired a security consultant to assess our vulnerabilities. He found 3 easy entry points Wesley could exploit, and we reinforced them all. "You're doing the right things," the consultant told me. "But understand, Someone determined enough will always find a way. Your best defense is documentation and quick police response. 2 weeks later, Caroline's car wouldn't start. The mechanic found sugar in the gas tank. No proof it was Wesley, but we both knew. Then my pharmacy received an anonymous complaint that I'd been filling prescriptions incorrectly, potentially endangering patients. My supervisor had to investigate. Everything checked out fine, but the shadow of doubt was planted. "He's not going to stop," Caroline said one night as we sat in our fortress of a home, cameras recording every shadow outside. "Even after the trial, even if he goes to prison, he'll find a way to get to us." "Then we need to make sure the trial sticks," I said. "Patricia found those other women. If they'll testify, if we can show the pattern, the jury will see what he really is." But I was worried. Wesley's lawyer was expensive and good, and rich men with connections had a way of slipping through cracks in the justice system. The preliminary hearing was set for 6 weeks out. Until then, we lived like prisoners in our own home. Patricia called me on a Thursday morning with news that made my stomach turn. One of the women who was supposed to testify against Wesley just recanted her story. Says she was mistaken about the timeline, that she might have been confused about who was stalking her. "He got to her," I said flatly. "Probably, but I can't prove it. And without her testimony, our pattern evidence gets weaker." I sat down heavily. "What do we do? We need something concrete. Something you can't explain away or have a lawyer spin." Patricia paused. "I have an idea, but it's risky, and it involves putting Caroline in a vulnerable position again." Caroline, who'd been listening on speaker, said, "Tell me." Patricia's plan was simple but dangerous. Wesley had been careful so far, staying within legal boundaries while terrorizing us from a distance. But Patricia believed his ego would be his downfall. If we gave him what he thought was a perfect opportunity, he'd take it, and we'd be ready. The trap was set at Caroline's mother's house, which had been empty for the past month while she recovered from surgery at her sister's place in Florida. Caroline would go there alone, ostensibly to check on the property and collect some mail. We'd leak the information through a controlled source, someone we knew Wesley had been watching. I hated everything about this plan. Every instinct screamed to keep Caroline safe, to not use her as bait. But she insisted. "I'm tired of being afraid," Caroline said. "I want my life back. Our life back." The day came. Caroline drove to her mother's house at dusk, carrying a bag like she planned to stay overnight. Patricia's team was already inside, hidden in the attic and garage. I was parked 2 blocks away with a direct video feed to all the cameras they'd installed. For the first hour, nothing happened. Caroline moved around the house, turning on lights, making it look occupied. Then at 8:30, movement on the back camera. A figure approached through the yard, moving carefully, checking windows. Wesley. He tried the back door first. Locked. Then he moved to a window, producing a tool from his pocket. Within 90 seconds, he had it open and was climbing inside. My heart hammered as I watched him move through the house on the camera feeds. He was carrying something. A phone, recording video. He found Caroline in the kitchen, her back to him. When she turned and saw him, her scream was genuine enough that it made my blood run cold, even though I knew this was planned. "Caroline," Wesley said, his voice calm on the audio feed. "We need to talk." "Get out," Caroline said, backing away. "You're violating the restraining order." "No one needs to know I was here," Wesley replied, moving closer. "I just want 5 minutes. 5 minutes to explain why you belong with me, not with that pharmacy clerk you married." "His name is Troy," Caroline said, "and I love him." Wesley's expression changed. The mask of civility dropped away, revealing something cold and predatory underneath. "You think you love him, but I've been patient, Caroline. I've given you time to see the truth. He can't protect you. He can't provide for you the way I can. That little girl of yours deserves better than growing up in a middle-class prison." "Don't talk about my daughter," Caroline said, her voice hard. "Our daughter could have a better life," Wesley continued. "Private schools, college funds, a real future." That's when Patricia's team moved in. The arrest was clean and professional. Wesley didn't resist, but the look he gave Caroline as they cuffed him was pure hatred. "This isn't over," he said. But this time, we had him on video breaking into a house, violating a restraining order, and making threats. His lawyer could spin a lot of things, but not this. 2 weeks before the trial, Caroline's sister threw a birthday party for her daughter, Ella's cousin. It was supposed to be a safe gathering, just family, a local park pavilion. We debated whether to go, but Caroline insisted we couldn't let Wesley steal every normal moment from our lives. I should have listened to my gut. We arrived early to help set up. Ella ran off to play with her cousins while Caroline and I arranged tables and hung decorations. For about an hour, it felt almost normal, almost like we were a regular family doing regular things. Then I saw him. Wesley stood near the parking lot, about 30 feet from the pavilion. He was dressed casually, khakis and a polo shirt, holding what looked like a gift bag. He made no move to approach, just stood there watching. I immediately pulled out my phone and called the police, keeping my voice low so Ella wouldn't hear. He's here. Wesley Vaughn. He's violating the restraining order. The dispatcher said a unit was on the way. 10 minutes, maybe 15. But Wesley had timed this perfectly. He knew we'd call the police. He knew they'd take time to arrive. And he knew that in a public park, surrounded by families, I couldn't physically confront him without looking like the aggressor. He started walking toward us. Slow, casual, like he just happened to be in the area. When he got within 20 feet, well inside the restraining order boundary, he stopped and held up the gift bag. I brought something for Ella, he called out. His voice was friendly, conversational. Other parents at nearby pavilions glanced over curiously. Get away from here, I said, stepping between him and the play area where Ella was. You're breaking the law. I'm just being neighborly, Wesley said, smiling that cold smile. Surely you wouldn't deny a little girl a birthday present. Caroline appeared beside me, her phone out, recording. The police are on their way. You need to leave. Wesley's smile widened. Let them come. I'm in a public park. I have every right to be here. Not within 500 feet of my family, I said. Prove I knew you'd be here, Wesley replied. This is a public park on a Saturday afternoon. How was I supposed to know? That's when Ella saw him. She came running over, her face curious. Mommy, who's that man? My heart stopped. Wesley crouched down, bringing himself to Ella's eye level. Hello, sweetheart. I'm a friend of your mommy's. I brought you a present. Ella, come here, Caroline said sharply. But Ella, being 5 and curious, took a step toward Wesley. I moved fast, scooping Ella up before she could get any closer. She squirmed in my arms, confused. Daddy, what are you doing? We're going to the car, I said, carrying her away from Wesley. Caroline followed, still recording. Behind us, Wesley called out. She's a beautiful little girl, Caroline. She deserves better than this fear you're teaching her. By the time the police arrived, Wesley was gone. They took our statements and the video Caroline had recorded, but they told us what we already knew. Without proof that Wesley had known we'd be at that specific park at that specific time, it was hard to prove intent to violate the restraining order. He's escalating, Patricia said when I called her that night. This is good for trial, but it's also dangerous. He's testing how close he can get to Ella. Next time, we might not be lucky enough to intercept him. There won't be a next time, I said. We're not going anywhere public until this trial is over. But I knew that wasn't sustainable. We couldn't live as prisoners indefinitely. Something had to break. The trial lasted 3 weeks. Wesley's lawyer was good, painting Caroline as a woman scorned, someone who'd encouraged Wesley's attention and then cried victim when she got cold feet about leaving her marriage. They tried to twist every piece of evidence, claim every threatening message was taken out of context. But Patricia had done her homework. She brought in Dr. Helena Foster, a psychologist who specialized in stalking behavior. Dr. Foster walked the jury through Wesley's pattern, explaining how predators like him identified vulnerable women, isolated them, and then terrorized them when they tried to escape. This isn't about love, Dr. Foster testified. This is about control. Mr. Vaughn doesn't want Ms. Bridges. He wants to own her, to prove that he can destroy everything she's built if she doesn't comply with his desires. Then the other women testified, 3 of them, spanning 15 years, each with a similar story. Wesley had targeted them during vulnerable periods, pursued them relentlessly, and when they rejected him, he'd systematically destroyed their lives. Jobs lost, relationships ruined. One woman's car mysteriously catching fire in her driveway. The video from the break-in at Caroline's mother's house was the final nail. The jury watched Wesley climb through that window, heard him tell Caroline she belonged to him, saw the naked threat in his body language. The deliberation took 6 hours. When the jury came back, I held Caroline's hand so tightly I was probably hurting her. But she didn't pull away. Guilty, the foreman said. On all counts. Wesley's face remained impassive, but I saw something flicker in his eyes. Not regret. Not fear. Just calculation. Even now, he was planning his next move. The sentencing hearing was 2 weeks later. The judge, a stern woman in her 60s who'd reviewed every piece of evidence, looked directly at Wesley. Mr. Vaughn, you've used your intelligence, your resources, and your position to terrorize multiple women over the span of 15 years. You've shown no remorse, no understanding of the damage you've caused. You are a danger to society. She paused. I'm sentencing you to 9 years in prison, with credit for time served. Upon release, you will be subject to a lifetime restraining order from the victims in this case. You will also be registered as required by law. 9 years. Not enough, but more than I dared hope for. Outside the courthouse, Caroline collapsed into my arms, sobbing. Not from sadness, but from relief so profound it had to come out somehow. It's over, she whispered. It's really over. It's over, I confirmed. We spent the next year rebuilding. Not our marriage. That was already solid, forged in the fire of Wesley's terrorism. But our lives, our sense of safety, our ability to exist in the world without constantly looking over our shoulders. Caroline got a new job at a different company, one with no connection to Wesley or his businesses. I kept working at the pharmacy, steady as always. Ella started first grade and stopped having nightmares about the scary man. We sold the house. Too many memories, too many cameras. We bought a smaller place in a different neighborhood, one with good schools and friendly neighbors who didn't know our history. 14 months after the verdict, Caroline and I went to dinner at a steakhouse downtown. It was our 14th anniversary, though we'd almost forgotten it in the chaos of rebuilding our lives. Over dessert, Caroline reached across the table and took my hand. Thank you, she said. For what? For not giving up. For fighting when I was too scared to fight. For being the man I always needed, but was too stupid to appreciate. You're not stupid, I said. You were targeted by a predator who knew how to exploit vulnerability. That's not weakness. That's being human. She smiled, tears in her eyes. When did you get so wise? Probably around the time I realized I'd almost lost everything that mattered. We drove home that night, windows down, music playing. Ella was at Caroline's sister's house for a sleepover. We had the house to ourselves, a rarity with a 6-year-old. As we pulled into the driveway, I looked at Caroline, really looked at her. The woman I'd married 14 years ago was still there, but she was different now. Stronger, more aware of her own strength. I love you, I said. I love you too, she replied. And I'm not going anywhere. Not ever again. We walked into our house, locked the door behind us, and finally, truly, felt safe.